The rooftop terrace of the Meridian Hotel offered a stunning view of the city skyline as 30 members of the Thompson family gathered to celebrate Dad's 55th birthday. The evening air was warm, filled with the sounds of jazz music from the live quartet and the gentle clink of champagne glasses. Chinese lanterns cast a golden glow over the elegantly arranged tables, creating the perfect atmosphere for what Dad had called an intimate celebration with the people who matter most. I stood near the edge of the terrace, nursing a glass of sparkling water while my family painted their familiar picture of my life. To them, I was Grace Thompson, the 27-year-old daughter who had lost her direction after graduating from NYU and choosing to work in what they dismissively called that nonprofit sector. "Daniel, you must be so proud of your children's achievements," Mrs. Harrison from Dad's country club was saying. "Your son Marcus just made partner at that prestigious law firm, and your daughter Jessica's wedding planning business is absolutely thriving." Dad beamed with pride, his silver hair catching the lantern light. At 55, Daniel Thompson had built Thompson Industries from a small construction company into a regional powerhouse that employed over 2,000 people. He owned prime real estate across the state, had been featured in Business Weekly, and expected his children to follow equally impressive trajectories. "Well, 2 out of 3 isn't bad," came the cutting voice of my cousin Brandon from across the table. At 30, Brandon was the family's golden boy, Wharton MBA, VP at a major investment bank, married to a pharmaceutical heiress, living in a mansion that regularly appeared in lifestyle magazines. The conversations around nearby tables began to quiet as Brandon's comment drew attention. I felt that familiar knot forming in my stomach, knowing exactly where this was heading. "I mean, let's be realistic about Grace's situation," Brandon continued, his voice carrying the authoritative tone he'd perfected in boardrooms. "She's 27, still living in that cramped studio apartment downtown, working for some charity that probably pays her $30,000 a year. My brother Marcus, 3 years older and Thompson Industries' heir apparent, nodded in agreement. It's actually becoming embarrassing. Clients ask about the family, and I have to explain that my little sister is going through an extended idealistic phase. For 7 years, I had maintained an elaborate cover story. I lived in a 600-square-foot studio in the Arts District, took public transportation everywhere, and wore clothes from discount retailers. When family asked about work, I spoke vaguely about social impact consulting and working with underserved communities. They assumed I was barely making ends meet while pursuing do-gooder projects that would never lead anywhere meaningful. The truth was radically different. I was the founder and CEO of Catalyst Social Ventures, a social impact investment firm that had revolutionized how private capital addressed global challenges. We weren't just another nonprofit. We were the architects behind the largest clean water initiatives in Africa, the funders of education programs that had reached over 2 million children, and the strategic force behind microfinance systems that had lifted entire communities out of poverty. But tonight, like every family gathering for the past 7 years, I was just Grace the disappointment. "The thing that concerns me most," Dad interjected, his voice taking on that parental tone of worry I knew so well, "is that Grace seems content with making no money while having no impact. These charity organizations she works with, what have they actually accomplished?" "That's exactly my point," Brandon seized the opportunity. "Grace talks about changing the world, but what does she have to show for it? No savings, no property, no investments, no security. She's living like a perpetual graduate student." My sister Jessica, 2 years older and the family's social butterfly, tried to soften the criticism. "Grace has always been the idealistic one. Some people need longer to figure out that good intentions don't pay bills." The intervention was gaining momentum around the table. I could see other family members leaning in, drawn by the drama of what was becoming a very public assessment of my life choices. "Here's what I don't understand," Uncle Robert joined the conversation. As Dad's business partner and co-founder of Thompson Industries, Uncle Robert's opinions carried significant weight in family discussions. Grace had every opportunity, excellent education, family connections, job offers from multiple Thompson Industries divisions. Instead, she chose to throw it all away for what exactly? Cousin Amanda, Brandon's younger sister and a successful real estate agent, nodded enthusiastically. "It's like she's allergic to success. Some people are just more comfortable being victims than achievers." The conversation was becoming increasingly pointed, and I could feel 30 pairs of eyes periodically glancing in my direction. This wasn't casual family teasing. This was a coordinated intervention disguised as birthday party conversation. Brandon, sensing he had the floor and family support, decided to escalate his assessment. He stood up slightly, using his investment banker presence to command attention from the entire terrace. "Since we're all here celebrating Dad's incredible achievements," Brandon announced to the gathered family, "I think this is the perfect time to address Grace's situation directly." My heart sank. Brandon was about to turn this into a public spectacle with 30 witnesses. "Daniel built Thompson Industries from nothing," Brandon continued, gesturing toward my father. "He created jobs, generated wealth, contributed to the community in measurable ways. Uncle Robert, Marcus, Jessica, we've all followed that example by building real careers and creating real value." He turned his attention directly to me. "And then we have Grace." The terrace fell silent except for the distant sounds of city traffic below. Even the jazz quartet seemed to lower their volume as Brandon prepared to deliver what I realized was going to be a devastating public evaluation. "Still living in that tiny apartment?" Brandon announced loudly, his voice carrying across the entire terrace. "Still taking the bus everywhere? Still working for organizations that accomplish nothing while the rest of us build actual businesses?" The laughter that erupted from the family was immediate and cruel. Cousin Amanda actually pointed at me while giggling. Uncle Robert raised his wine glass as if toasting Brandon's assessment. Even some of Dad's business associates were chuckling at Brandon's public takedown. The whole room erupted in laughter, Brandon continued, clearly enjoying his moment as family spokesman. "As we all know the truth. Grace is nearly 30, living like a college student, contributing nothing to society while pretending her volunteer work is somehow equivalent to real achievement." The mockery was reaching a crescendo when my phone rang. The ringtone cut through the laughter like a knife. In the world of high-stakes impact investing, there are certain calls you never ignore, regardless of timing or social circumstances. The caller ID showed Jennifer Walsh, Executive Assistant Priority. "I need to take this," I said quietly, standing up from the table. "Grace, we're in the middle of a family discussion," Marcus protested. "One moment," I replied and answered the phone. But instead of stepping away for privacy, I remained standing right there on the terrace. 7 years of public humiliation had finally triggered a decision I'd been postponing. "Ms. Thompson," came the crisp, professional voice of Jennifer Walsh, my executive assistant and one of the most efficient people I'd ever worked with. "I'm calling to confirm the completion of your Manhattan penthouse purchase. The $15 million transaction has been finalized, all inspections completed, and the deed transfer is official." The terrace went completely silent. I could see the color slowly draining from Brandon's face as every word carried clearly in the evening air. "Additionally," Jennifer continued, "I wanted to update you on the quarterly board meeting results. Catalyst Social Ventures portfolio performance exceeded projections by 18%. Our total assets under management have reached $3.2 billion, making us the largest social impact investment firm in North America." I remained perfectly calm as if this conversation was the most natural thing in the world. The jazz quartet had stopped playing entirely, and 30 family members were staring at me in complete shock. "Excellent news, Jennifer. Has the UN Education Summit confirmed my keynote address for next month?" "Yes, ma'am. Secretary General Martinez specifically requested your presentation on innovative financing for global education initiatives. Your work with the African Clean Water Fund will be featured as the primary case study." Brandon's wine glass had frozen halfway to his lips. Marcus looked like he'd seen a ghost. Dad was gripping the edge of the table so hard his knuckles had turned white. "Perfect," I continued. "Please remind the Nobel Committee that I'll need 2 additional seats for the Peace Prize ceremony. I'd like to bring my parents as guests." "Of course, Ms. Thompson. One final update. The White House confirmed your appointment to the President's Global Development Council. The announcement will be made Tuesday morning." I ended the call and looked around the terrace. 30 faces stared back at me in complete bewilderment. The laughter had died so completely that the only sounds were distant traffic and the gentle breeze rustling the lanterns. "I apologize for the interruption," I said calmly, placing my phone back in my purse. "Where were we?" Something about my tiny apartment. The silence stretched for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. Finally, Mrs. Harrison found her voice. Grace, did your assistant just say you bought a $15 million penthouse? Well, technically it's a triplex penthouse with a private rooftop garden, I corrected gently. The Manhattan real estate market has been quite favorable for luxury properties this year. Uncle Robert was staring at me as if I'd materialized from another dimension. Grace, she also mentioned something about billions of dollars in the United Nations. I nodded. Catalyst Social Ventures manages investment portfolios focused on social impact projects. We fund clean water initiatives, education programs, healthcare systems, and sustainable development projects across 43 countries. Dad finally found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. Grace, I don't understand. How is any of this possible? We've generated over $800 million in measurable social impact while delivering above-market returns to our investors, I explained. Last quarter alone, our education investments reached 400,000 children in underserved communities. Our clean water projects now serve over 2 million people in sub-Saharan Africa. Brandon was still frozen in place, his earlier confidence completely evaporated. But Grace, you live in that studio apartment, you take the bus. I live modestly because I believe in practicing what I preach about sustainable living and resource allocation, I replied. The studio apartment is actually my city office. I own properties in 6 countries, but I prefer to invest in impact rather than lifestyle. The revelation was creating ripples of shocked whispers throughout the family gathering. People were pulling out their phones, clearly searching for information about Catalyst Social Ventures and discovering that everything I'd said was verifiably true. There's something else you should know, I continued, reaching into my purse for a folder I'd brought but hadn't planned to use. Catalyst Social Ventures has been the silent partner behind several Thompson Industries projects over the past 5 years. I opened the folder to reveal investment documents and partnership agreements. The sustainable housing development that won Thompson Industries the Environmental Excellence Award? We provided the initial $50 million in impact investment capital. Dad's face went pale. The Green Communities Project. That was you? That was us, I confirmed. We've been helping Thompson Industries transition to sustainable practices while maintaining profitability. Your carbon footprint has decreased 40% while your profits increased 28%. Marcus was staring at the documents with growing shock. Grace, these papers show millions of dollars in investments. Our total investment in Thompson Industries projects has been approximately $180 million over 5 years, I replied. We do it because strong local businesses create stable communities, which aligns with our mission of sustainable development. The weight of these revelations was settling over the family like a heavy blanket. People who had spent 7 years pitying me were discovering that I had been supporting their success. But why didn't you tell us? Mom asked, her voice trembling with emotion. Why let us worry about your future? Why let us think you were struggling? I looked around the terrace at the family members who had spent the evening making me feel inadequate. Because every time I tried to explain impact investing or social venture capital, you dismissed it as charity work or idealistic nonsense. You had already decided that success only looked one way, your way. Brandon finally found his voice again, though it came out as barely audible. Grace, I owe you an enormous apology. We all do. I love this family, I replied, which is why I've been supporting you in ways you never knew about. But I can't continue pretending to be less than I am just to make you comfortable with your assumptions about success. I gathered my purse and the folder of documents. Tomorrow I have a UN summit to prepare for, investment portfolios to review, and communities around the world depending on the work we do. If you're interested in learning about what I actually do, about the work we're doing to address global challenges while generating sustainable returns, then we can have real conversations. As I prepared to leave, Dad called out one final time. Grace, what happens now? I turned back with a genuine smile. Now you know the truth. And if any of you are interested in using your skills and resources to create positive change in the world, Catalyst Social Ventures is always looking for partners who want to prove that doing good and doing well aren't mutually exclusive. Walking toward the elevator, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. Tomorrow I would continue the work of changing the world while building a business that proved social impact and financial success could work hand in hand. Some tiny apartments, it turns out, are just launching pads for changing the world.